Hey all, so here we have this next week of Summer of Pain, now with the Hydra Adaptoid. Not quite the same as when we saw it in story content, so let's go over some of the nodes real quick. So first off, immune to armor break tells us right away that this guy is probably not intended to be taken down with Medusa or with Arcus. So they're instantly trying to take out two of the hardest robot counters, and when we combine that with Special Lock 2, probably not intended to be encountered by Magneto either, although just because of his always active 70% ability accuracy reduction, you could probably still make this work. You know, he'll turn off some of the power gains, he'll turn off some of the unstoppables, he'll have higher perfect block chance to keep you tankier, he'll do extra damage. If you're not worried about any of the objectives because he satisfies none of them, and you just want to get through this and you're used to using Magneto against metal champions, you can probably get there. We also have this power buildup and power overflow, and those two combined with true focus basically ensure that you're going to be looking at some unblockable specials at some point, so make sure that you have the evades down. I don't really think that there's much of a way around that, short of using somebody like Guardian or Sinister or maybe Mordo who can block unblockable attacks. But, you know, if we look at plus 300% attack and health, I'm not sure you want to be blocking them. So, like I said, I think part of this challenge is just going to be dealing with the special attacks. However, there's nothing in here that stops power control. There's nothing in here that stops buff control. There's nothing in here that stops ability accuracy modification. And this this boss is pointedly missing the vigor node that made it so much of a challenge in the story quest. So you don't have to deal with or outpace recurring healing. All you have to do is deal with the actual abilities of the Adaptoid. So let's take a look at those real quick. So the biggest one is that after every special attack, there's going to be a nice long unstoppable. And every 8 seconds, there's going to be a power gain buff, but you can remove it by hitting them. What this means is that if it gets out of control, there's a decent chance that the Adaptoid will be unstoppable for a very large chunk of the fight, and you can get backed up. You might get caught by some of those unblockable specials. It could go poorly for you. However, if you're not concerned with the objectives and you're just a Cavalier player trying to get this down, I already mentioned Magneto, but basically all you need is someone who will stay alive long enough to deal enough damage and get around the unstoppable. And because you have willpower healing, assuming you have willpower unlocked, in the form of that special lock 2, then somebody like She-Hulk or Claire or Sorcerer Supreme, probably even Doom, like there are going to be a lot of ways through this. Because like I said, you don't have to worry about the healing that originally made this fight trickier. You just have to deal with the unstoppable and get them down. So you also have this power burn, but honestly, if you get hit by either of the special attacks, your run is likely over anyway, so I wouldn't worry about those too much. Basically, you're just going to deal with, there's going to be a recurring power gain, there's going to eventually be unblockable specials because they're going to build up prowess, especially if you're taking advantage of that willpower healing by sitting at 2 bars. And there's going to be unstoppable buffs. That's pretty much what we're looking at. As you can see here, I've already entered with magic because I think she's probably the easiest shield option for this. But let's take a look at exactly what we need to do here. So we need to finish this with a shield champion, an XL villain champion, and a metal champion. So shield is basically incompatible with villain for obvious reasons, but we can try and filter here by both shield and metal to see if there are any double dippers, and no, there are not. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, Let's just look at shield. Like I said, I think magic is probably one of the easiest, but Dr. Voodoo's going to be a really solid one if you don't have her ranked. True Focus takes out Quake. You might be able to do this with Hawkeye, honestly, because if you're staying on top of him and keeping the power buffs under control, then you're gonna have to wait out some unstoppables, but there's nothing stopping his power drain. He would just do anemic damage because he doesn't have access to any bleed. However, like I said, you don't have to outdamage the nodes, so that could work. And then we're not really looking at many other options, in my opinion. I mean, if you play this carefully enough and wait out the unstoppables and just do enough damage, you can theoretically solo this with almost anyone, so I don't want to say none of these others will work, but I personally wouldn't bother. So that's shield. Let's take a look at metal. Like I said, there are a ton of options here. Doom can definitely do this. Guardian might be able to do this, although I do think you're going to want to deal with the Unstoppable. That means Yellow Jacket would actually be great. He comes with a slow debuff, and he has power stings, so he can punish all of the specials that the Adaptoid's going to get. Honestly, somebody with a rank 3 Yellow Jacket might have one of the easiest times through this week. I really want to see that fight. Punisher 2099 might work, because when he's in overdrive, he reduces how much power the opponent gains by hitting them. So if you can stay on top of the power gain buffs, you won't have as many specials to deal with. Stealth Spider-Man is obviously going to be solid because that Unstoppable isn't going to surprise you, right? So you're going to have time to get that slow debuff up. The problem here is that you don't have access to your special 3. I'm not an expert stealth player, so maybe there's another way around that, but that would make me personally nervous. You might be able to do this with Morningstar. Because you won't be able to capture the soul, her special 2 won't be unblockable, but you could still intercept with it, and if you remove multiple buffs, it will still do solid damage. Wouldn't be my first recommendation, but it could work. Strife, I think, is going to be a top option, honestly, because he deals well with Unstoppable. As we talk, he's actually somebody on that list who can deal with unblockable attacks if he gets a concussion up. And then he can just ramp okay. Actually, that's a problem. He won't have access to his special 3, so he won't really be able to ramp. He can still get up to 20, which is decent, and he will be able to do enough damage, and he has the other tools. I think we're definitely going to see Strife solos, but he is somewhat limited here. Going through these others, you might be able to get away with Falcon. But then I think we come down to who I really want to talk about here, which is, let's leave Metal on real quick and add Villain and XL. And I can't, you can only select 2 tags at once. Well, if we do that, we can still look at Mojo, who's what I really wanted to talk about here, because he is Metal, XL, and a Villain. And if you have anti-life field up, you're reducing the duration of the opponent's buffs by 90%. And on top of that, whenever they expire, you're doing degen. So that 8-second long unstoppable becomes a 0.8 second long unstoppable. The power gain buff does not fill a full bar, it'll just be a little one, and he'll take damage every time they end. I think that Mojo is probably the best counter out of anyone, just for how well he's going to satisfy multiple objectives here. There's also the benefit, and this applies to me personally, that I don't believe you would get any benefit from him being duped, because it's only a single fight, and therefore you don't need to worry about the ramp up carrying over anyway. So the important part here is that you just play through the prompts and use Mojo, and I will definitely be working on him later. However, I haven't put a lot of time into Mojo myself, so I'm not going to do that live right now. Crossbones might be able to work. You can see that Strife is a villain, but he's not an XL villain. So let's move over and just look at those. Just XL and villain, I've already heard Kingpin is very good for this because if you kind of play this similarly to the Darkhawk, where you try and keep him from throwing specials, then you will rapidly build to your special 2, and it will keep trying to apply that Power Lock 2 debuff to you, which will often get converted into Rage. Now, if it doesn't get converted into Rage, you could throw your special or just wait and you would, eventually trigger the take damage way of gaining Rage again, and then you'd eventually get to 8. They would all be purified, and then it would reapply the Power Lock. There are a number of ways of playing it, but basically, odds are with Kingpin, you're going to be gaining a ton of Rage, you're going to hit incredibly hard, and as long as you play around the Unstoppable, he's just going to do a ton of damage in the windows you do get. I think he's going to be great. Apocalypse could work. You can't double the debuffs in potency and make them permanent, like we did for so many fights in Gauntlet, because you don't have access to the special 3. However, he does have that 35% concussion, and he does have degen. That concussion would turn off some of those Unstoppables, and depending on how you play it, there's a very, very, very small chance that he would cancel out enough of the power lock buffs to get you to a special 3, but I seriously doubt it. Still, though, Apocalypse is just a big tanky champion, can do a lot of damage. The concussion will help. He's probably an option. Again, you probably could do it with Sentinel, but you could do it with anyone, so I don't think he's really a top option. Juggernaut might work, honestly. It would be slow, but he has access to stagger. He's an XL villain. As long as you can land those heavies, keep that stagger up and fuel MD to get you up to that power lock debuff so that you can heal back some block damage, that's really not a bad option. For those of you who have a high rank Dormammu, he would probably be incredible, if slow, for similar reasons to the others, because he's an XL villain who can basically achieve some of the same power lock things that Magic can. So kind of hard to beat that. I don't know enough about Mangog to speculate on that, honestly, but I do know he has access to a stagger, so it seems possible. And honestly, that's probably where I would stop. Well then, with that, I'm going to go ahead and put this out so it doesn't get too long, especially because the first solo I attempt will be Magic, and I expect that to be a few hundred hits, honestly. The 5-star without synergies just does not hit that hard, and it's going to be slow. But maybe I'll post that and the Mojo fight when I get to that later on. I hope this helped you guys. Let me know if there are any options that you're considering that I didn't mention. I'm always really curious to hear about those. If you've already taken this fight down a couple times, let me know who you used. Really curious to hear how that went. And, what are your thoughts on this? Do you feel like this is another interesting fight? Is the difficulty too restrictive? Are the objectives too restrictive? Or do you feel like they really kind of nailed it here? Personally, I've been pretty happy with Summer of Pain so far. Some of the fights could have been a little harder, but given how much trouble a lot of people are still having with them, thanks to, AI issues and high attack and health values, who are Thronebreaker, I feel like they've done a pretty good job. So let me know what you think of that. Thanks. See y'all next time.